welcome to Peaking. We're joined this afternoon with Kathy Long, founder and CEO of AdeptExec, and the chief of staff of potentially my favorite Denver company, FarmShare, trying to make the meat distribution more efficient and effective for the farmer. Definitely excited to talk about both ventures. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Hi, so great to be on, Wyatt. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely awesome. So, just a brief background. You, I believe, kind of started in sales. You've done some customer success, and then chief of staff, and now founder. Have you kind of had a clear career path, or have you just kind of found your way, or how have you gotten to where you are now?
Yeah, well, I have four children, which I always loved. They are my pride and joy. And I always tell the kids, like, whatever you decide in high school, it's not linear. Never has to be linear. You don't have to pick one thing and that's what you're going to be the rest of your life. I do, like, even my father, he worked in a factory for a bit. And back in the day, you would get a job and you would work that job for the rest of your life. My life has been anything but linear. I have been a sales leader, I have been a CX leader, I have been an account management leader, um, I have been an individual contributor. I think right before this, we started talking about where I worked at Children's Hospital as a CNA for a bit. So, yeah, it's been a very long, illustrious career. And yeah, I think that's why I'm doing two jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah, the for the listener, the children's hospital conversation that you missed, I am nursing a broken collarbone and subsequent surgery. And we had to delay this podcast 3 weeks, but we're back. We're peaking again. We're happy to be here. So, um, yeah, the biking world comes with its perils. You got to be careful out there, and sometimes things come up. But
Well,
what are you gonna do?
you
You
look
move on.
amazing. You look amazing.
I don't feel amazing.
You're
I'm gonna.
faking it really well.
Oh, I'm trying to. I'm gonna do my first hike this Saturday. It's 5 miles, about 1,200 feet elevation gain. That's why we moved to Colorado, be near the mountains. So we're gonna try and see if I can still be active. But
Yeah, rock
it,
on, man. That's you got to keep going. Where are you gonna hike at?
down south of Golden, I'm forgetting the name of this. I think it's near Evergreen.
Okay. That'll be
Uh,
fun. Great
a
weather.
fellow Ironman athlete is encouraging me to, get out there, and he's going to carry my pack for me. And uh, it's a fun little community. I've noticed the Boulder and Denver startup community is incredibly tight. You mentioned when we first talked, being a conscious entrepreneur, and I think we'll talk more about that. And his name's Alex Hammond or Raymond. I should know that name. He's the conscious entrepreneur founder. Like he's founding that company. But it seems like he has a very tight bubble of founders that he works with, and the Boulder Startup Week and Denver Startup Week. There's really tight communities in Denver and Boulder, and I really appreciate it. It's taken me founding a company to realize that and to see it, but it's a really cool environment. Have you been here in Colorado for most of your career?
Yeah, I think we moved from Chicago 26 years ago, so it's been quite some time. I do love the Boulder startup culture. I don't know if you got a chance. Well, you've been nursing an injury, but there was Boulder Startup Week last week.
Yeah, I missed that one.
Yeah, I did a panel there. It was so much fun. And I think I even saw an article somebody had posted about the Boulder startup community, that it's not competitive, it's collaborative. And I would say like everybody is in to help each other, which is really different. I feel like when there are events in Denver, you have a whole different vibe than when you have an event in Boulder.
I could see that. Yeah, it is very different. Denver feels a little more industrial and a little more. Yeah, I could see it being feeling a little more competitive. In terms of you know growing a company, you decided to found a company. I want to talk a lot about that and your goals and what you want to do. Um, did you ever know you wanted to start a company? Was that just a multi-year decision? How did you get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, I think many years ago when my kids were even much younger than they are today, I want to say my oldest, he was maybe 10 or 11. I decided to start my own business back then, and it was of all things, a diaper service company. I looked at the landscape of any job nobody really wanted to do, and I saw that there was only one other diaper service company in this area. So I went into business. I didn't do bad. I actually made money that first year. I was a solopreneur and I had a lot of fun doing it, but after a couple years, I decided I don't like crap. Literally, I didn't want to talk about that anymore. And
Turns
so
out the
there was
reason people don't do that is the reason you didn't want to do that.
I know. It's like if one more person asked me how to deal with diaper stains, I swear to God. So yeah, so I quit that, but I think it kind of gave me the bug, and I thought, well, gosh, I love starting a job and owning it from soup to nuts and having full authority over my dominion. And I think there was a point where I said, no, I'm just going to go back to work for somebody else. It's so much easier. Somebody gives you a list, you do that list, you're completed for the day. And then I think a couple years ago, I just started getting hungry. So it was right around the time of the pandemic. I was working for Reed Group, which was a division of Guardian Life Insurance. And I think was it 2019, 2020? They would pay for you to go to school to get your master's. So I was like, I'm going to be bored anyway. Who knows how long this pandemic's going to last? So I went and got my master's and I really enjoyed it. And everything about it was leading me and wafting me towards entrepreneurship again. And then I had another role, and then now that I'm at FarmShare, I would say even starting out, just being in the startup space with Henry Arrowwood, he's amazing. He's so fun. He's taught me so much about just getting out there and doing it, being scrappy, taking risks. And I think, and Henry, if you're listening, I'm going to say something that you're going to laugh about, but I thought if Henry could do it, I could do it. And I don't know if he makes it look easy, but he does make it look fun. And there was one point where I think it was last July where the bug hit and I went online and started a company and here I am.
Amazing. Yeah, I really liked meeting Henry too. He actually lives down the street from me, and he was out of town, and so they had a package of beef delivered, and he needed some help. So I have his Montana beef in my freezer right now.
That totally sounds like Henry. Henry is all about the beef.
Oh, I have too. I love that. I buy from Rugby Scott down in Denver with Denver or near Wash Park where you can buy Colorado, farmed beef. And what you guys are trying to solve, and I don't want to make this about farm share as much, but it's just a problem that needs to be solved. You can't have four massive distributors controlling everything, and farmers should be able to sell. Like it's so ridiculous the way it's currently set up. So I
Yeah.
couldn't be a bigger cheerleader for the farm share mission and what y'all are trying to do.
Yeah, no, FarmShare is definitely on a mission to disrupt the meat industry in particular. And the cool thing about FarmShare, and this probably my favorite, is when we go on road trips and we go meet the customers and we get to go to the meat processors. So I don't know when you last spoke to Henry, but there is a push now for us from a product perspective to focus mostly on the processors. So we get to go to the meat processors. We get to see the meat firsthand as it's getting, killed, butchered. And the cool thing is that we get the freshest beef, and that's part of my role is to say, oh, we need to go do samples. So we purchase some samples, and we get to bring those home, and it's just it's nothing is like fresh beef. Nothing is like it.
Yeah, yeah. When you get the grass-fed, grain-finished from a farm near you, it is very different. You have the Costco beef and you have the Rugby Scott beef, or I mean, what you're talking about is probably a level above that. It just tastes so much better in every dish. You can make any, it
Oh
could be
yeah.
ground beef, it could be a steak. It's just so much better. And everyone should be able to have that. And the fact that these processing giants restrict that is so annoying.
Oh
It's
yeah.
corruption.
Well, and shout out to Arapahoe Meats up here in Erie. They have the best beef bacon. My daughter won't eat anything but their beef bacon.
Beef bacon. Oh, that's so good. I've had that once. I bought it from Rugby Scott as well. That's so good. I love beef bacon. Man,
Oh,
that's good stuff.
delicious. Yeah.
We could talk about beef forever. You have a philosophy that there's a better way to run a business. How would you describe that, and where did you get that perspective from?
Yeah, I think everybody I know has been in this position one way or the other where you just think I could do it better than this person. And that's not, I mean, at FarmShare we do. Just for full for velocity, this is not what FarmShare practices. FarmShare practices a different type of business process, which is your typical corporate structure and hierarchy. And that's totally fine, and that really works for them. I think when I started looking at the pattern of the kind of business that I wanted to have, my business, so AdeptExec, has a product called Nixit. And Nixit is for people who are neurodiverse. So it's for the autism and the ADHD community. And that starts with the love and the passion of my life, which is my children. My oldest son, Jack, has autism and ADHD, and it's been a trial. There's been a lot of challenges through our lives with him. Um, when we got to the point of thinking about how we wanted to structure things, I wanted Jack to be a big part of it. And I wanted this to feel like somewhere he could feel safe. And once I started just, doing a lot of discovery with different potential buyers and customers, I started recognizing the hunger and the need for people to really feel good about a mission-based company that's living and breathing their values. So the values of the non-negotiable of, no tech bros, we're all kind of in it together. I think it just stems from wanting to be a part of a community at work and not just something that's somewhere you clock in and clock out. So that's where that comes from. It's from the heart, it's from my family. And I want to construct something so that we have neurodivergent people who feel safe in their workplace.
Do you need to answer that?
No.
That is beautiful. I definitely see that being a wonderful place to work. How can you describe Nixit?
Yeah, so Nixit is an AI executive functioning companion. So it's SMS first technology, which SMS is so old school, but there's an AI chatbot component to the SMS technology. I think it stemmed from me asking Jack. We created this MVP mobile app, and I said to Jack, would you use this? And he says, no, no way. And I said, oh my gosh, we've built this great tool that I think you can use. And that's the whole reason you do a prototype, I think. And he said, Mom, I'm only going to use text. Like, if you can send it to my text, I'll use it through text. So I thought, well, are we doing any chat AI or any AI LLM through the SMS interface? And no. So we started to move in that direction, and now we're getting momentum. Now people are getting really excited. And I think I will say my tech team, when I said we're going to go with SMS first, I had a lot of sad faces because they want to do the fun, cool platform pieces, which we'll get to after this. But the SMS is constructed in such a way that's neuro-affirming, and it's going to help you as you do all of your activities of daily living. In the future state, we're really hoping to create almost a contact level system where people with autism sometimes misunderstand communication, and it's hopefully going to clear the way for them to live like everybody else and to interpret what other people are saying in all chat and all communication.
So, how does that work if you're behind the desk and Teams message or Slack message comes in? You can have an API connected, and the Nixit will kind of help you understand what that message is saying from a
Yeah, so
perspective that you'll understand.
Yeah, so the bot is Nixie, and so Nixie's going to talk to you in a way that makes you understand what's happening. So you can choose when you onboard into Nixie what kind of tone or what kind of persona you want, whether it's more of a champion, more of a cheerleader. If you want a drill sergeant, you can have that too. Some people work really well that
We don't
way.
need that one.
I think I'm a drill sergeant kind of gal myself. But I think my son, he wants something that's going to be a little softer, a little kinder, more neuro-affirming. And what it does is it will help you with any of your activities. So as you're chatting through what you need to do that day, whether it's schedule an appointment, whether it's help me understand the breakdown of getting my oil change, any of those activities of daily living that we take for granted, people who are neurotypical take it so for granted. I know how to do an oil change. I know what I need to do for my taxes. Well, people who are neurodivergent, they don't. They struggle. So if you want, I mean, you could think of it, I like to think of it this way, which is it's a mom in your pocket. It's going to help you and it's going to make you feel better about anything that you're doing that day.
And how does it you like prompt it each time?
Yeah, so that's because it has an AI interface. So we've built Nixie with a lot of neuro-affirming AI tools on the back end. So as you're plugging it in, there's lots of different prompts, a lot of neuro-affirming prompts. How are you feeling today? Are you ready to tackle that appointment with your doctor? Are you having any issues? What can I do to help you? So there's also reminders. Your doctor's appointment's at today at 2. Are you ready for that? Do you have your insurance card? It's going to break things down for you. In so many ways, and I have heard this, is a lot of my neurotypical friends are like, oh, I could use that. And I think that's where it becomes a very broad use of this app. Even people with parents who have dementia or, dementia's coming and they're worsening of symptoms and cognitive abilities, or a parent who's going through chemotherapy. There's so many use cases to help somebody when they really need a helpful reminder and somebody who's really gentle in their pocket to help.
Yeah, I mean, it's a the mom in the pocket is a beautiful way to put it. It's a virtual assistant that can have a lot more added context, into whatever any type of person that it's working with. Yeah, I really. So, do you need to require access to? We don't need to get that technical, but do you require access to every single thing on the device, every application on the device?
No, not in the beginning. We have a three-phased approach. The first phase is the SMS, so the companion, and the companion tool goes with the dashboard. The dashboard is something you can plug into. It will have some gamification. There'll be point value system. That'll make you feel like there's some reward to some of the hard work that you're doing.
I love
It's going to
that.
capture the historical record of the chat. So that as you're using it, you might need to refer back to how did I get the oil change? What was it when Nixie mentioned that I need to go to the doctor? What are some of those things? And then I think then the phase two approach, it's going to be an accountability partner platform. People who are neurodivergent, as you can imagine, are on an entire spectrum of cognitive support. So some of our users are going to require a heavier handed support, which could be a parent, it could be a spouse, it could be a roommate, it could be a physician. And so we're going to have an accountability dashboard that plugs into that so that person can also help them. And it's going to guide them, what is Jack up to today? What has Jack been struggling with today? Oh, I see he has a doctor's appointment. I see it asked him about an insurance card. Oh, I better get him an insurance card. He probably didn't know that he needed one. So, in so many ways, it's a mom in the pocket, but there's going to be that approach from a business standpoint that you can have an accountability dashboard. And we're really hoping to get this into some schools too. We've had some interest in some schools to have a teacher who might have a whole subset of neurodivergent students that they need support. Little bit extra TLC.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think just like neurotypical people could use this. I think every student could use a similar application. Just making education better. I think education in our country needs to be improved. Everyone recognizes that. No one necessarily has the exact answer, but I think technology, especially this wave of AI, is hopefully going to do that. There's so many startups that are trying to build AI revenue tools and sales tools and marketing tools, but the most valuable application might be from assistant tools and teaching tools. I really like that you built gamification into the product. There's all those reward pathways in technology applications. Excuse me. Like Instagram and Facebook keep you going because they have. I used to hire the scientists that keep people addicted to these things, like literally PhDs in psychology that Meta's hiring to keep people addicted based on these things. But you can flip that around and do it for a useful meaning, like make it interesting to you because of the chemical pathways in our brain and because of the dopamine firing for useful and productive things. Like Strava is I never used until I started training for this race. It gives you all these positive reinforcement for exercise. Like that's a useful application of hijacking our psychology. I'll take
Oh
I'll,
yeah.
I'll take that. And
Well,
you're kind of doing the same thing. You're reinforcing and gamifying something that is a very positive impact.
yeah, and I think what really sets us apart is we'll have streaks and it'll be a lot of fun, but we're using a lot of evidence-based language, so very neuro-affirming language. There are, especially in the autism community, They are not into somebody screaming at them or telling them they're rubbish and they need to go harder and push it forward. Sometimes they just need to be told you're doing great, you're on track, what you did today was amazing, and just clap yourself on the back. That's actually far more motivating to them than some of these extrinsic things that I think you and I love. Like I love goal setting and I love stars and stickers and anything that makes me feel like I did a good job. But that's not what always makes them, connect to something. So there will be streaks, there will be fun, but there's also going to be adventure. I also think that most of the products on the market right now for people who are neurodivergent, especially the ages from 12 to 26, which is our sweet spot, a lot of those products they treat them like infants, like they're dumb, like they're stupid, like there's something wrong with them. And I recognize that my son has a girlfriend and he doesn't want to hang out with us and we are uncool. And anything that I want to provide him, I want him to feel like an adult. I want him to feel independent. I want him to feel like nobody's restricting his ability to grow and achieve what he needs to achieve. And I think a lot of the products tend to do that. They infantilize people who have disability. And yes, it's a disability, but a lot of people are working right through it. So that's what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of you said evidence-based language, are there a lot of studies out there on how neurodivergent people prefer to communicate?
Yeah, and again, I mean, I think neurodivergence, just for listeners out there, it's a broad term. People who have ADHD are neurodivergent. People with dyslexia or dyscalculia. If you have a traumatic brain injury that's pervasive and chronic, that could be considered neurodivergent. So it's a giant umbrella. Um, I think my personal passion project is for the autistic group of people that I love near and dear to my heart. And I would say that the evidence is really out there that non-shaming is actually far more productive from them, meeting them where they're at, giving them tools to where they can navigate their social constructs that they're in. Um, I want to say that there was a research study that said something like 60% of people with autism are unemployable. Mostly because they're incredibly direct. They don't always get like the things that everybody else just assumes in the workplace. They come across as rude or dismissive. And again, that's not all of them. They're all, on a spectrum. But they do find that once people do hire people with autism, that these are amazing employees. They're incredibly loyal, they're hardworking, and if you just meet them where they're at, they could be an incredible opportunity for a company. So I want to get our people to that point.
And I want to correct my language. You're supposed to use person first language. It's someone with neurodivergence, not neurodivergent people. I did learn that in one of my classes focused around accessibility in college. So wanted
It's
to
hard not to. I tend to go back and forth sometimes too, to not say, I have to, I mean, Jack's had autism since he's born and he's 24 now. And back in the day, we'd say people with autism. We wouldn't say autistics. And I twinge a little when I say autistics, but I do try hard to remember how to say that and not to go back in my brain.
Yeah, it's one of those. I imagine Jack might have no opinion on the matter.
He
It's
doesn't
like,
care.
I don't care.
He doesn't care. I think I asked him one day what his pronouns were, and he's like, I don't care. He doesn't care. And that's
Yeah,
that's kind of good in so many ways.
yeah,
He's an
yeah.
incredibly laid back person that just doesn't really care what you think about him at all, which gosh, I wish I could do sometimes.
Yeah, that's hard to do. That's really hard to do. That kind of goes against our DNA, I think. It's like, that's very hard to do. Everyone tells you to, but it's hard to do.
Yeah.
You have another philosophy about business around employee ownership. Uh, Talk about that, and have you been able to put that into practice, or is that just kind of a vision you have? And why is that?
Yeah, we're a four-person startup right now, so it's pretty small. But the vision and the strategy overall, and the employees are very well aware of this, is that it will be an employee-owned company. Years ago, when I was in sales, I met this one company called Trendwood, and they're down in Arizona, and it's an American-made furniture company. And I got to explore the facility and get to meet everybody, and everybody was an owner. And the amount of responsibility and accountability and ownership was just seen through every single human I met there. They had great pride in their product. They were enthusiastic about their product. And I got to learn so much more about what an employee-owned company could look like. And at that point, I believe that was when it started, where I'm like, wow, I want an employee-owned company because they seem to be the most productive company. I mean, everybody will just pitch in and do whatever. They're just, there's no limits to what they would do because this is their company. And even my contact there, he was very matter of fact that it was his company and he owned a great deal of the company. And for him, everything, every decision, whether it was financial, whether it was physical, emotional, he was incredibly approachable to how to navigate the company. I think there were contracts that he was involved with that even though he wasn't a decision maker on the contract, he cared about the price of the contract. I don't think I'd ever seen that in any other company because in a lot of corporations, things are very modular or they're very, I don't know, just very specific and encapsulated on their own islands of what their responsibilities are. But in an employee-owned company, everybody owns part of it. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, it seems like it would be a more of a team environment. Like we are all working toward the same goal, and it's not a bunch of freelancers just doing their job, or
Yeah.
people with very little investment in their jobs.
Yeah, and I had worked for a company, Hotel Engine, for a bit. And Hotel Engine, I mean, from the first moment you get hired and onboarded, they were all about your equity and your options. And that was a part of every performance review. That was a part of the discussion over the company. And every time we had an all hands meeting, that's all Eli Walton would talk about is just what that could look like for the employees. And I would say that drove a lot of the energy. It was a great direction for us, and I think it was important to really point it out how equity can compel you to do more than just your role.
I think it attracts ownership personality too. Yeah, you have a lot of people that are very big on extreme ownership. That book that went viral for like 5 years by Jocko. That might be more of a tech bro thing.
Yeah. I don't mind a tech bro. I married one, but
He's just not allowed at your company.
I just don't. I think for us, it was because of the neuro-affirming language and wanting to foster an environment of kind. It's definitely wanting to, I don't know, segment ourselves out in a way that we are not tech bros. But I have nothing against tech bros. I love them.
Yeah, don't method for all founders out there. Don't hire tech bros. Marry them.
I agree. Do that.
Oh, that's funny. So culture building obviously very important to you. What is the most important aspect to you in building a strong culture at a company?
Yeah, I think that in my experience, what I've noticed really works to build out culture is to have it as part of everything that you do. Even at FarmShare, we do the EOS system from the book Traction, and I really like it. At first it was an awkward thing to onboard, but I've really embraced it. And what we try to do is we measure everything and then we tack it all back to the big rocks. And everything that we do has to be tacked back to the big rocks. And I would say probably the company gets bristly sometimes with me about it. But I'm like, is this satisfying our big rock? Can we measure back? Can we show that this works? And I think you have to constantly do that with culture and with your mission and vision alliance. You have to say to yourself, are we taking care of the neuroaffirming people here? Are we taking care of our customers who require the neuroaffirming aspect of what we do? What are the parents going to feel when their children use this app? What are the grandparents going to think of if their children are using this app? And you have to think of users from the beginning to the end of the life cycle of the user. And I think that's how you embed that within your company as well, is to constantly put the user front and center. I'd say there was something I read about Jeff Bezos years ago, and I think everybody knows this one, where he every time he'd have a meeting, he'd put a chair in the room, and the chair represented the customer. And the good news for us from a culture perspective is it's all about neuroaffirming and it's all about taking care of the neurodivergent people or the neurodivergents in our atmosphere and just making sure that we're there for them and we put the chair front and center of everything we do in the room.
Awesome. Yeah, I share that story quite a bit with a few other people I've talked to on this podcast, actually. And you actually talked about something very similar with building that app. And then your son says, I would never use that. And that's honestly so common, it seems, where people have this wonderful product in their eyes, and then the customer hasn't been consulted, and you have to have that as a pillar of your product and product development is like, what is the customer thinking? Learn from the customer. That's the most important person. As soon as companies start losing the vision of the customer's perspective, it's time to move on. You gotta jump ship. That company's not going to last forever. I think, or it's just not as productive or enjoyable to work at as well. I've worked at firms where we're talking about profitability and revenue and how to make as much money as possible, and at the cost of the customer sometimes. And it's like, okay, this is a short-term move. We might make a little more, but I don't think this is the right decision long term. And
Yeah, it's definitely not putting the customer first. And I think for us, the cool thing is that we employ people who, are on the spectrum. We employ people with ADHD. We employ all types of people, and they are the customer as well. And I think that's been kind of fun is creating with our customer in mind with people who are our customers. I will say, often with our engineer, we might have to say, hey, I know you have this flavor. What about this flavor? We have to like think of the continuum of the spectrum of all customers because you can kind of go, oh yeah, that works for me and my flavor, but I could see that might not work for Jack. But it is definitely a big puzzle to solve.
who are you selling to?
Right now, we're very focused on the user. We are launching at the end of June, so we're still pre-revenue. Um, by I think September, we're hoping to start to sell to schools. So that's the goal is to get the platform up and running. So there's more to the platform than it's SMS first, but there's a whole component of the platform that's going to be part of the learning process. There'll be modules, there'll be tutorials and educational information as well. And I'm partnering with some other businesses for that. And then we're hoping to get into a couple schools. We have 3 schools in mind who have shown some interest. And so we're going to hope to pursue those schools.
A couple pilot programs, get
Yeah.
some feedback, see what they enjoy, what they don't.
Yeah, because again, it's hard. You might want this for all of your students. I think one teacher had expressed that sometimes her students come to school and they may not be neurodivergent, but they may be having some troubles at home. There might be some personal issues, and they have no way of knowing at this point without the parent divulging it or the student divulging it what kind of day they're having. So this would kind of bypass that so that they would be able to have that level of information prior to the student coming into the classroom.
Interesting. Would the parent have access to the tool?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be the tricky part is that level of access as kids get older. I know my kids would be really frustrated with me. They're already frustrated with me tracker jacking them. And just knowing, like right now, I could look and tell you where Jack is. He's with his friends at a lake.
That's where his
And I
phone
could,
is.
that's where his phone's, that's what his phone's, I know, it could be he gave it to a friend to just take it there, but um, I don't know. When you meet an
I was just kidding.
autistic people are pretty honest.
Yeah, I was just kidding.
He's very brutally honest to me, which
No one
is
leaves
very
without
fun.
their phone anyway.
I know.
The oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I interrupted you. Not a good podcast tactic. The school aspect, I mean, it's very similar to another company I'm working with called Breakout Learning, where it might be something you'd be interested in looking into. It's not the same product whatsoever, but it's essentially a conversation platform where students can talk to each other, and it's over a virtual call like this, or perhaps you could record it. And it basically just summarizes the conversation and sends the professor everyone's understanding of the topic and gives them a lot more insight to every single person's knowledge or lack of knowledge in a certain area of the conversation. So instead of a test, you can tell everyone to discuss it. And I don't know if that would work especially well with a community of neurodivergence, but just all this tech that I think any accessibility tech is so exciting, and it's got to be so rewarding, and uh, just the application of technology that helps people. You know, it's the famous Silicon Valley quip of "make the world a better place." You know, it's
Oh
like
yeah. I think like for us, I think schools are where we start. I don't see the end to any sort of market opportunity for us. I see a market opportunity for folk rehab, opportunity in PT, OT. I mean, I could go through the list of everybody who ever touched Jack in the 24 years that he's been on this world. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of market opportunity out there.
what do you think that could look like with all these other people? Would it just be like they have an app as well that connects and gives a certain amount of access and helps
Yeah.
communicate?
Yeah, I think it's a little like APIs, like if everybody understand, like most people understand the concept of APIs. So if you're a teacher, you'd have the connection to your cohort of students. If you're Voc Rehab, you would have a connection to your patients. If you were at a hospital that, monitors or manages people, such as those with autism, you would have access to those particular people's experience. And there could be levels. And I do think as we start to build this out, there's going to be permissions that people who are over 18 get to grant. And they may not want to do this, like for their therapist, they might not want to do this for OT if they're continuing to do that. But what we're hoping is to provide at least that level of accountability partner where they have somebody to help them if they need it.
Awesome. You mentioned some non-negotiables when we first talked about topics of discussion. Non-negotiables in business for you. How would you define those? What are those for you?
Oh, I don't have my list of non-negotiables, but those would be kind of what others might call their vision. So it's the vision of what our company is here for. So a lot of the non-negotiables, without looking at my cheat sheet, would be kindness, good intention, knowing that when you're talking to somebody and you're approaching somebody, to not take anything too seriously. One of the things we find with autistics is that they say things very boldly and bluntly, and sometimes even if you are autistic yourself, you're gonna not appreciate the way they're coming across. So, as you can imagine, that's a little terrifying as a CEO to have to navigate that sort of thing. We've navigated that already, and it's been kind of a challenge to like have people with different parts of the spectrum. Some of it I require, which is curiosity. There's no owners. There's nobody that's here to be the boss of anybody else. You own your own work. You take accountability for your work, and you perform at your highest level. So those are just some of them, and I think it's really, I'd say if I would take away any of the non-negotiables, it's be kind and expect others are being kind too. Because I think that's where people get tripped up at work. They get too caught up in their ego. And I think then arguments ensue and politics pervade, and it becomes a toxic workplace pretty quickly.
Corporate politics or something else. It's just almost becomes a joke at times. Like, what are we doing? It's like,
I
can
know.
we get back to our North Star here? What's the EOS? It's called The Rock. I haven't read that book. I think I need to
Oh,
add that.
you've not heard of Traction? Oh, you've got to read Traction. I had heard about it for many years, but we have OKR. I've always had OKRs,
Yeah.
so that's what I focused on. This is very similar to OKRs. It's just a different methodology. There's like visionary and integrator, so there's different roles people play. So not only do you have division heads, but then you have other connective tissue to the organization. And then there are the big rocks, so the company rocks, and then, like an OKR. And then everyone else has their division rocks. And then under the division rocks, it's how are we going to measure those? Um, I think the one thing that I've noticed about EOS from other people is they tend to want to do too many. Like, I'm going to do all the rocks. Well, it's per quarter, so good luck. You really need to focus. And I think that's from operationally being excellent is being able to, even if you feel like you're not going to get done enough that quarter, if you could identify those three key things that are going to move you to the next level that quarter, you really have to drill down and focus on those. And then the measurement pieces, again, you have to think of this in terms of it is not a scoreboard, it's a scorecard. So as you're completing things and you're measuring up, it's not about just looking at it and admiring your scoreboard. It's actually creating a scorecard where you're going to pursue the excellence to each of those metrics. So it's a little bit like KPIs, but these are not vanity metrics. I hate vanity metrics. I will fight them to the day I die. And I always think if you're a person who really requires goals, you could do non-compensable KPIs where you say to yourself, I know that if, like in sales, I know that if my behavior was to get me to this level, and let's say my target was 100,000 TCV for the month. I know that I personally would need to make 50 outbound calls. I would have to do 20 demos. I would have to do whatever it takes to get to that KPI or that rock or, however you want to measure it. And the thing I think we try to reduce is the vanity metrics. So I would never say don't do vanity metrics, but I would say those would not be those that you focus on. So EOS is a great book for that.
And is this something that you come in as a fractional chief of staff and implement?
Yeah, well, actually, I got a promotion, so I am a general manager. Woo! I know I went from chief of staff to general manager, but
Chief of staff sounds higher.
I know it sounds much better. General manager, yeah,
It's
I
kind of a
mean,
warehouse title, Henry. What are we doing?
it is a warehouse, Henry, it's a warehouse title. Um, no, I think chief of staff, yeah, you do
Just
sound like
kidding.
you're the chief of something. No, but the general manager, I do everything there. Like I do a little bit of all the things, the day-to-day stuff. Right now, I think I'm focused on sales, but it's always operational excellence behind the scenes as a general manager.
And on your LinkedIn, it says something about fractional chief of staff. Have you done other um, work with other companies, just helping them out in that fashion?
Yeah, I've had some paid gigs. Mostly it's just coming in and problem solving. Most businesses, and especially there was one startup founder who, it was a funny story. He said to me, well, what would you do about selling? And I said, what do you mean? And he's like, well, I'm an accountant and my co-founder's a lawyer. And I went, okay, like already I'm struggling with you because you're missing some key components you would need for a startup. And he's like, so what do you think we need to sell? And I'm like, well, you need a sales motion and you need a seller. And so for him, it was, well, how do I do that? So then I put together a program for him for developing his own sales strategy and methodology as an accountant, which good luck to him. I would probably farm that out a little bit. But there were other components that he was missing because, as you can imagine, you now have it set up for a seller, which is great. Now you have at least a bare minimum sales motion of outbound and inbound. But now he needs marketing too. So I'm like, well, here's your bare minimum on marketing. Now you have a little ecosystem of your sales and now you're marketing. And he said, so how are you going to support your customers? I don't know. Well, I don't think your lawyer's going to do it. I guess I think you're going to have to do that too. So then we set up a strategy. And so once you start to develop the ecosystem, like now, how are you going to manage all these components? You got to manage it now. And so as a fractional chief of staff, you kind of come in and you help people put the glue together for all the different components they need. And that's the brilliance with a chief of staff role is that it's not sequestered to any part of the organization. No one piece of the organization owns you. You get to flit and flee and kind of seed yourself into all the different components. One component that I'm surprisingly good at for somebody who's never trained is HR, talent acquisition, and performance management. That's from when I was a leader, but it was something that became really fun for me. Putting together benefit plans and packages, that's something else the chief of staff can do, and it's something that I've helped others put together. There are a lot of regulations out there. AI is really good with keeping you up to date with your regulations. Um, I helped another company with they were not paying taxes correctly. So they thought they had made assumptions that their HRS system was helping with the taxes. And it just took a quick audit to say, nope, they're not. You're going to get in trouble. So you have to start working on developing something that's going to feed you the information and you can action the information, but something to kind of put you on autopilot. So yeah, so the fractional chief of staff, if anybody wants to be it, I highly recommend it before you become a founder. It's a really good role. It's going to teach you everything about all different parts of the organization.
And that sounds very dynamic. It seems like it'd be hard to get into if you haven't done it before, though. How
It
did what?
is. Well, chief of staff, I wouldn't say it's like new, but I'd say it's probably the last decade it's become more popular. I think it was a brilliant move on Henry's part to hire for a chief of staff. Once I got into the organization, it was so funny because I'm thinking, I don't, I've never done chief of staff, but I'm totally into this because I've done operations and sales and revenue generating, et cetera. And then once I started to recognize where he is doing founder-led selling, that there was administrative function that was needed, but it wasn't just like booking lunches or, you know, getting the office equipment up to speed, but it was a little bit of everything. So it was paying bills, so it was becoming bookkeeper, it was managing the people and managing the taxes and the regulations. And it was all these other things that really took him away from his core responsibilities. And I was able to really fill that need. And I would highly recommend that to any founder who is struggling to maximize their time and potential. AI is only going to take you so far. It's really nice to have a generalist, a Swiss Army knife to go in and solve all the little gaps in the system.
The general manager title makes more sense now because
Yeah.
it's not just the boss of the staff. It's management of is like you said the generalist. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
and I think most people utilize chiefs of staff very similarly, where it's you're just the Swiss Army knife where they put you where they need you, you kind of lean in. You're also communicating a lot with the different departments, whereas the CEO might not have that visibility or line of sight. The general manager title, that promotion was based on improving our revenue structure. So again, that was back to my near and dear, which is sales and the sales opportunities and account management and post-sales recovery of cost efficiencies. So that's been kind of fun to kind of basically go from a little more administrative over to something that's really in charge of the revenue. So that's been kind of fun. I think even Henry calls me boss now, which I like.
What do you think is the most common mistake business owners make?
Oh, spending money. Like that's the one thing that some of my clients have struggled with. Friends, other founders, they always spend money that they have. I think it's everybody wants money. You want to go after your angel investment money or you want to go get your round of VC, and that's really great. But the problem is you'll spend it as soon as you get it. And that's the struggle. So even for FarmShare in particular, I've had to really work on reeling it in. When you have the opportunity, you think, oh, then let's expand our marketing presence or let's expand, how we're advertising for sales to get more inbound. That's very seductive. You can find so many ways to spend money to generate more money later. You really have to take that holistic and just look at the entire landscape of what money you're spending, where your ROI is, and then start to maximize those pieces. And sometimes you do spend a little bit of money, which is fine, but you've got to be really careful about your money. Your runway has to be king at all times. And even if it's like a $5 coffee, you've got to really consider it and think about it. It's so easy to just go, oh, I've got 500K in the bank. I'm going to take the team out to lunch. Be more mindful of how you're doing that. Like, yes, take them out to lunch, have happy hours, do those things that you need to do for community bonding, but be careful how you're spending money because it goes fast.
Yeah, we're going to In and Out. We're not going to Elways.
Right? I know. I know. We're
You
going to the
actually
saloon.
you talked about that bootstrapping versus VC. When is bootstrapping the right decision? When is VC the right decision in your mind?
I'd say bootstrapping is always the right decision. I think I personally don't want anybody to control me as much as I can. I think where VC money comes in handy is when you really have to scale and you have to grow and expand. I think then you have to really look at your runway and say, what makes sense for me today? Everything I'm reading right now, though, is pointing to what's in my heart, which is I think VC is the new private equity. Like it's really feeling like um, it's just not as friendly of a financial situation for most companies. I think there was like this bonanza of money for a while where VCs were providing you the opportunity to scale for a position of equity in your company. But I find that people are looking for money too soon and they're getting rid of their equity. I think that there was this company that comes to mind where it was a robotic company and they wanted to make these robots. And these robots were so expensive, like the overhead of robots. So they took more and more VC money to get to where they needed to be. And after they exited, the CEO had nothing. Like it was very, very small. And it always sounds good in theory, but you really have to bootstrap as long as you can get away from it or get away
You
with it.
just become an employee.
Yeah, right. I know. Then you're just making a salary and then you exit and then you have to start with another company and then you learn don't take more money than I ever need to take.
Yeah, and it's just a job, and the risk is on the investor and not you anymore, you know?
Yes, yes. And the investor, depending on the kind of investor that invests in your company, they can have a deeper say in your company and they can put you out. They can find you not to be an effective leader and they can put you out. So that's always that fear.
That would be brutal.
Wouldn't it? Like your heart, your soul, your sweat, your tears, and somebody 3 years later says, you're out.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, it's such a risk environment. Anyone founding a company, not anyone, but I would think a majority are just very high performance people. They really are people that can just accomplish a lot for the most part, and to, put so much effort into something, and that happened to you. And I don't think that's a one-off case. I think that I've seen multiple examples of that, and people talking about that in the space. So,
Did you hear of that company, Cluey?
yes.
Oh my God, those guys. Like, I think it's a marketing shtick. Like, there's no way that I think they wanted 50 engineering interns. I'm like, there's no way you can manage 50 interns. You can't, you literally can't. They're going to come to you with a million questions. Like, you're going to have something for these people to do, or there's going to be a lot of people sitting around. And what a waste of money. They bought that big space in San Francisco, and that's where somebody gave them $5 million and they just went nuts with it. And, it's an interesting story. I don't know where that's going to end.
The checkbook being handed over is kind of crazy as an investor. Like, I would still want to sign the checks. It's like you have access to this money, but I'm gonna sign the checks. Like, you
I
don't have
know.
free reign. You're not buying courtside tickets. You're not buying the top suite in the Salesforce Tower.
Oh my God. Well, when I saw their pad, their office, they got one of the most expensive, largest offices in downtown San Francisco. What? Yeah, that 5 million is gonna go like lightning.
Commercial space is down, but
I know, but it's like you can't, and then it's like I'm gonna pay $50 an hour for each of these 50 engineers. First of all, if you're using AI, why do you need 50 engineers? Anyway, I could really I go off on a tangent over having employees, more than 20 employees at any company. There's no need unless you're like Anthropic. Um, if you're building in the space that I'm building in the AI ecosystem, you do not need more than 20 employees. Once you hit that 20 number, I really feel like things get dicey. Personalities, toxicity, like it's a whole different flavor of company when you hit that level.
yeah, that was supposed to be the result of AI, is that you're gonna have less large hiring sprees and more builders able to accomplish what they're trying to achieve. You're gonna have more companies, is the idea. Like, there might be less jobs at Facebook, less jobs at Amazon or whatever it may be, or any company, but there's gonna be more companies, and so the amount of jobs might be somewhat similar. But
Yeah.
they still want true builders. I think the days of kind of just floating, or staying quiet in the corner at a company and collecting a paycheck might be beyond us. They might be disappearing.
I agree. I think we are all becoming AI managers more than we're actually anything else. And I think I've seen this evolution for a long time where it's um, I think performance and growth at all costs kind of methodology. Maybe, go back to the tech bro, where growth at all costs, we're just going to grow. Whoever the bottom 10% we're going to cut. Bottom 10% we're going to cut. And I mean, I would see that at some of the companies that I've been at, which are very highly competitive. And it was always harsh because your bottom 10% could still be pretty good. You know, they could still be A players at a different company, but for you, because it's a larger company, 10%, you're just, you're not as elite as these others. Um, so that's one of the challenges I think we're going to see over time. I also think employing juniors is going to be hard. Unless you're coming in as a junior with some level of internship, knowledge of AI, you're really going to struggle because they're going to look for somebody who can leverage AI. And as you know, like some of the AI, you might be able to do a front end, but your front end's not going to connect to your back end. Like you're still going to need an engineer to debug it. You're going to need an engineer who knows how to use the copilot. You're just you can't make assumptions that somebody off the street or somebody out of college is going to be able to fill those types of shoes.
What do you think is the most important thing for someone recently out of college to focus on in this landscape?
Ugh, I don't know. That's a tough one. I would say develop skills. We just did a hiring of a VP of engineering at FarmShare, and that was very interesting right now because I think the market's really weird. People are out of work, a lot of engineers are out of work, so the talent out there is heavy. There's a lot of great talent, a lot of good white collar engineering talent. And I think what really set a lot of the candidates apart, and I think this even goes for juniors, is their repo. They had all sorts of in GitHub. They had a really condensed repo. You could see their projects. They could share their projects. They talked about what they were doing, you know, out of non-dictation. So I think one thing I think I've seen with some juniors is they say, I just got out of college, hire me. And it's like, well, do you have a project? Nope. You have to work on your own personal project. I'd say put together an app, start using those tools. Figure out what the best tool set is. Start to play with those tools. Learn to debug, learn to co-pilot and debug. I think those are really valuable skills that when you do have these interviews where they're looking to hire a junior senior, you're really going to stand out from other juniors because you will have done a project on your own. You will have maybe even gone to market with some of these. I think like with Bolt.new, you could connect to what is it? It's Netify. I don't know what it is, but you can actually put it on your phone. I've played with it myself, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so fast. And I think if you can do those things and it gives you something to talk about, that's really going to set you apart. So focus on your own projects, focus on cool skills, go have fun, enjoy yourself, go travel, meet people, do something creative. Just feel yourself, teach yourself as much as you can teach, because once you finally do get that job, they're going to expect you to have a higher level of sophistication, a higher level of emotional, that EQ. And you're also going to be expected to know more about certain products and levers than you would have anticipated when you just came out of college.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, even people that have experience, people that I've recruited for startups in the VC ecosystem, which is kind of where I focus, if they've worked at enterprise or any company that doesn't have any open source work and they have nothing to show for it, you're a step behind the person that does. And if someone has a really robust GitHub or they have a product that they've built that is multiple steps ahead, if you can talk through something you've built, because startups want builders. You know, they're not looking for someone to take tasks and just do one task at a time. They want people that can think about things from every angle. And yeah, early employee or college grad or not, having those projects, that visibility is so crucial and
Well, and
helpful, at least in the startup environment. And I can't imagine it hurt in any other environment either.
no,
Uh,
there was this one guy I knew who put his shingle out. He wanted to do his own thing. And I think he was some sort of a developer. Anyway, I was very curious. I wanted to see what he did. So I looked at his website. It was so janky. Like it was so uneven. Like, so that's the other, I would give myself a caveat. Learn all that you can, put yourself out there, but check your work on multiple devices to make sure it looks right and it renders correctly, especially if it's something that if you're expecting an employer to look at it, that it's rendering, it's not squiggly, it's not blurry, because your product is what people are going to judge you on.
that wasn't my website, was it?
It wasn't yours. That was this one person. They were looking for like $200 an hour, and I'm like, honey,
Ooh, oh, as an
maybe
engineer?
60. You gotta play. You gotta, yeah, you gotta like update your stuff.
Yeah, that's a big ask too. You gotta be pretty talented to ask for that right now.
Yeah, he really thought he was great.
Uh, What is last question, and then we can kind of talk about anything else you want to discuss. But what is something someone should consider or look into or research before they make the jump into starting a new company?
I, if you're young, I would definitely work for a startup. I would work for a startup. I think that's really important to see what a startup's like. I've pulled my husband into AdeptExec, and he's an enterprise principal architect, and he has been a pain in the ass. He's he's so enterprise, and it's a whole different mind shift when you're a startup, you're a scrappy startup. I think the other thing, that I've noticed too with startup people is if you don't have a lot of background in company or industry, you come in thinking you're going to do all these things and you're not thinking scalability. You're not thinking of how this is going to work in the whole ecosystem with your other coworkers or how you work cross collaboratively. So that would be my thing is go get a job at a startup, make sure this is what you want to do, and then start slowly. Like, get your LLC, build something, get an MVP out into the ecosystem, try it out. And that's what we did. We threw a prototype out into the system to make sure that all of our discovery made sense. And while a lot of the people liked it, Jack didn't. So we had to shift, but it was really important to go through that process. I think if you're brand new and you're just starting at a company and you want to do your own thing, you won't know how important discovery is. You're not going to understand what the customer journey could look like. You're also going to struggle with defeat. And there's so much, you have to eat shit for breakfast. Like you've got to be ready to fail. And you've got to like embrace failure. You got to get excited about failure because with every failure, you're going to have a win. So just keep going. So go do it, jump in. But I would give yourself a little background first and then go play. Go play. It's a beautiful sandbox out there. Just go play.
Yeah, there is definitely both sides. Some people say jump into the deep end, 40 hours, 60 hours, 80 hours, just jump in, just go do it, quit your job. And then others are, build for a year, build for 6 months while you have your job, build on the weekends and the evenings, kind of have something, make sure there's a product market fit, make sure there's, you don't need to go all in. But I think every case is probably different. And I like the idea of working at a startup first. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense to me. You're just going to learn so much, a startup environment is so much different than an enterprise environment. It's so
Oh,
different.
yeah.
My only startup experience was actually in Munich. I worked for a tech startup in Munich, but it was so different. And I'm so happy I did it. It just, even as on the recruiting side, just the exposure to every single aspect of the business, every single aspect of what builds a business, what it takes to run a business. In enterprise, you're in your lane. You
Mhm.
don't see all that. So it
Well,
is fun.
you're gonna make mistakes, so you're either gonna make mistakes on somebody else's dime or your dime.
Yeah.
So I always encourage everybody to make those first few mistakes on somebody else's dime. Then when it's your money, you're gonna make far less mistakes and you're gonna have a better outcome. You're gonna feel better about the product that comes out of that.
Awesome. Anything else you want to talk about in terms of Adept Exec, leadership lessons, farm share? Anything else you wanted to cover?
No, I mean, I feel like we've covered everything. This has been so fun, Wyatt. I've not laughed this hard in so long. It's been a good session, and I'm so glad you're finally healing. I was so worried about you, but I'm glad you're healing. Your skin looks amazing. Keep putting oint, as any mom would tell you, just keep putting that ointment.
I do. I did get the ointment. That is why we call it peaking. We're peaking out here. I really appreciate that last comment. And I do have the skin cream. Another lady that crashed. There were 6 people that were transported in this race. It was
Oh
just
my
a
God.
disaster of a race. And the lady, she's done 7 Ironmans, just so experienced, and she crashed. So I'm not saying it's due to my inexperience. It was just a bad race.
Well,
But
I
she
think
recommended this $50 skin cream. It's like this little lipstick size thing. It was $50. She's like, use this for your skin. It'll make sure there's no scars. So I'm morning and night putting on the skin cream.
I know it just looks a little red. It looks good. It just looks a little red. It looks
Oh
totally fine.
yeah, this is the least of it. My whole body got tore up, man. I was just. I don't recommend crashing a bike. Yeah.
Don't crash a bike. I know. But you know what?
uh,
Now you have a great story to share with everybody.
it is a story. It's a comeback story. So I still need to come back. I still need my revenge arc. So I'm gonna work on that. But if I can get it done, it does make for a better story. It's true.
I love it. All right. Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you
much
so
for coming
much.
on.
Thank you. Take care.